Modern India, Unit 40, Foreign Policy of India, 1947 to 64, 1947 to 64. Structure 40.0 Objectives, 40.1 Introduction, 40.2 Principles of Indian Foreign Policy, 40.3 Evolution of Indian Foreign Policy, 40.4 Non-aligned movement, 40.5 Disarmament, 40.6 Pakistan, 40.6.1 Kashmir, 40.6.2 Indus River water distribution, 40.6.3 Military aid to Pakistan, 40.7 China, 40.7.1 Developments in Tibet, 40.7.2 Tension on India-China border, 40.7.3 Chinese aggression of 1946, 40.8 South and Southeast Asia, 40.9 West Asia, 40.10 Superpowers and other major powers, 40.10.1 The United States, 40.10.2 The Soviet Union, 40.10.3 Britain, 40.10.4 France, 40.10.5 Japan, 40.10.6 Australia, 40.11 African countries, 40.12 Let us sum up, 40.13 Keywords, 40.14 Answers to check your progress exercises. First topic, 40.0 Objectives. After reading this unit, you should be able to learn about the guiding principles of Indian foreign policy, know about the major thrust of Indian foreign policy, discuss the important issues related to Indians' relation with Pakistan and China, explain India's relation with other Asian and African countries, describe India's attitude towards superpowers and other major powers. 40.1 Introduction. This unit deals with the foreign policy of India during the period of 1947 to 64. It starts with the discussion on the basic principles of Indian foreign policy and how did they evolve since 1947. It also takes into account the non-aligned movement and India's efforts for establishing peace through disarmament. Certain other specific issues concerning Indo-Pak and Indo-Chinese relations and India's attitude towards other countries of the world have also been discussed. 40.2 Principles of Indian Foreign Policy. The basic principles of Indian foreign policy can be described as follows. First point, India has never been in favor of participation in any military alliance either bilaterally or multilaterally. It has always been opposed to any military approach to the world problems. Since the advent of Cold War, the United States and Soviet Union have been engaged in an arms race, arms race, including the building up of nuclear weapons and in foreign military in forging and in forging military alliance against each other. India believed that this only helped attenuating tension between nations resulting in armed conflicts. Hence, India opted out of alliance system, bilateral or multilateral, in order to create conditions favorable to peace. Second point, Indian foreign policy has been an independent foreign policy, not tied to any of the two contending power blocs. It was, however, not a neutral foreign policy. In fact, India has never been neutral on international issues. It has judged every issue on its merits and expressed its opinions in clear terms in the various international forums. FORUMs. This policy at times has earned a for India to the displeasure of some of the great powers, but many countries of the third world appreciated India's stand. Third point. India has pursued a policy of friendship with every country, whether of the American bloc in brackets capitalist system or of the Soviet bloc in brackets communist system. Its declared policy is not have preference for the one against the other. India has adopted a democratic system of government. This, however, has not drawn India closer to those countries of the West who have a similar system, nor has this distanced it from the communist countries. Fourth point. India, being an ex colonial country ruled by the British, has been pursuing an active anti colonial policy during its independent existence. India's emergence as an independent power on the world map has accelerated the process of decolonization throughout the Asian, African, Latin American countries. Following India's independence, Ceylon, Burma, and Indonesia became free. Subsequently, India has contributed towards the independence of the African countries by speaking for them in various international forums. Fifth point. Another persistent stand in Indian foreign policy has been the policy of anti-apartheid APARTHEID. As mentioned earlier, in brackets in Unit 16, Gandhi fought against apartheid in South Africa during the turn of the 19th and the beginning of the 20th century. But it is a matter of great shame for the mankind that apartheid is still being practiced in a brutal form in South Africa. This is an utter disregard of world opinions and every norm of civilized behavior. India has raised the issue for the first time in the United Nations in 1946. Ever since, it has been taking an active part in the worldwide movement against apartheid. APARTHEID. Sixth point. India believes that the objectives of world peace could not be achieved if the countries are engaged in the pursuit of arms buildup and military alliances. Hence, considers disarmament as the key to the world peace. Moreover, through disarmament, a huge expenditure on arms could be saved and that money could be used for the development of the poorer nations. Next topic 40.3 Evolution of Indian Foreign Policy. In the early years of independence, the Indian foreign policy was described as neutral foreign policy by some people because India wanted to keep herself away from the two blocs, that is, the Western and the Soviet blocs. But neutrality is a legal concept and India has never been neutral in that sense. In fact, it expressed its opinion on all important international issues, judging each on its merits. Hence, the foreign policy of India should be called an independent foreign policy, not neutral. The term non-alignment got currency in the post-Bandung Conference BANDUNG post-Bandung Conference phase in 1955. And the first conference of the non-aligned group of countries was held in 1961 in Belgrade BELGRADE. It was a bipolar world when the principles of Indian foreign policy were first enunciated ENUNICATED. The two camps, led respectively by the United States and the Soviet Union, vied with each other for influence all over the world. In 50s and 60s, on several international issues, much to the dislike of the superpowers, India sought to take a position not always similar to that of either blocs. However, things began to change when the passage of time, and there was greater appreciation of Indian policies in later years, particularly after Detente detente between the two superpowers. Unhindered and unlimited nuclear and conventional arms race between the uh, two superpowers brought and about a new situation in the world. The power equations were qualitatively changed due to the following points: the Sino Soviet dispute, the American intervention in Vietnam. End of page 33. Continued in next part.
My name is Vani, Subject History, Unit 40, Foreign Policy of India 1947 to 64. 40.3 Evolution of Indian Foreign Policy. In the early years of independence, the Indian foreign policy was described as neutral foreign policy by some people, because India wanted to keep herself away from the two blocs, that is, the Western and the Soviet blocs. But neutrality is a legal concept, and India has never been neutral in the sense. In fact, it expressed its opinion on all important international issues, judging each on its merits. Hence, the foreign policy of India should be called an independent foreign policy, not neutral. The term non-alignment got currency in the post-Bandung BANDUNG Conference 1955 phase and the first conference of the non-aligned group of countries was held in 1961 in Belgrade, BELGRADE. It was a bipolar world when the principles of Indian foreign policy were first unicated, ENUNICATAD. The two camps, led respectively by the United States and the Soviet Union, vied with each other for influence all over the world. In 50s and 60s, on several international issues, much to the dislike of the superpowers, India sought to take a position not always similar to that of the either blocs. However, things began to change with the passage of time, and there was greater appreciation of Indian policies in later years, particularly after detente, DE''TNTE, between the two superpowers. Unhindered and unlimited nuclear and conventional arms race between the two superpowers brought about a new situation in the world. The power equations were qualitatively changed due to the Sino Soviet dispute, the American invention in Vietnam, the French decision to have an independent nuclear capability, and the Chinese acquisition of independent nuclear arsenal ARSENAL. The power configuration thus shifted from a bipolar to a multipolar world. Over a period of time, India too acquired to a certain degree the status of a military power that could not be easily ignored. Indian foreign policy had to change its postures accordingly. Though the basic postulates POSTULATES remains the same, the Indian foreign policy is very much conditioned by the demands of security along the northern and western frontiers, the challenges posed by the rarely changing realities in the Indian Ocean area, need for acquiring and assistance from abroad, and the development of trade with other countries. 40.4 Non-aligned movement. The non-aligned movement NAM was largely a product of India's efforts. This effort was aimed at organizing a collective answer to bloc politics of the great powers in international affairs. It also aimed developed friendly relations among the countries who were trying to free themselves from colonial domination. Another related aim was to promote peace in the world. The NAM took a concrete shape with the holding of its first conference in 1961 in Belgrade. The 5 pioneering leaders of the NAM were President Tito of Yugoslavia, President Nasser of Egypt, President Nkrumah of Ghana, President Sukarno of Indonesia, and Prime Minister Nehru of India. The preparatory committee of the first non-aligned conference formulated the following criteria of non-alignment. 1. A country should follow an independent policy based on peaceful coexistence and non-alignment, or should bestowing a trend in favor of such a policy. 2. It should consistently have supported movements for national independence. 3. It should not be a member of multilateral military alliances concluded in the context of great power conflicts. 4. If it has conceded military bases, these concessions should not have been made in the context of sea-it powers conflicts. 5. If it is a member of a bilateral or regional defense arrangements, this should not be in the context of great power politics. Ordinarily, the non-aligned conference takes place every third year, and the second conference was held in Cairo in 1964. 40.5 Disarmament. India has always worked for disarmament at the international level. When the Charter of the United Nations was being framed, India kept itself closely associated with that process. In order to achieve international disarmament, Article 11 of the Charter said that the General Assembly may consider the general principles of cooperation in the maintenance of international peace and security, including the principles governing disarmament and the regulation of armaments, and may make recommendations with regard to such principles to the members of the Security Council or both. India supported the formation of Atomic Energy Commission in 1947 and sponsored 18 Nations Disarmament Conference in 1962. The United States and the Soviet Union differed on the process of complete or partial disarmament, and thereby the issue remained unresolved. India was a great critic of nuclear proliferation, PROLIFERATION, and spoke against it at the UN and other world forums. Check your progress. Question 1. List the 3 important principles of Indian foreign policy. Answer in about 5 lines. Question 2. What do you understand by non-alignment? What are the principles that a non-aligned country has to follow? Answer in about 10 lines. Question 3. Mark for correct or wrong for cross off for the incorrect statements. Number 1. India is not opposed to the fornication of military alliances. Number 2. India always maintained neutral stand on international issues. Number 3. The major thrust in India's foreign policy is the promotion of world peace. Number 4. Non-aligned movement is a collective effort to diffuse the tensions created by bloc politics in international affairs. 40.6 Pakistan. Pakistan has been one of the main adversaries of India. The causes of discord between India and Pakistan lay in the manner of the creation of Pakistan itself. Partition of India in 1947 created new problems for both the countries rather than solving any. Both the countries have been engaged in a continued arms race resulting in wars. This has caused a serious strain on their scarce resources, severely disrupting development of both the countries. Pakistan, since its birth, has the aspiration for achieving parity with India in all fields. Another problem was to establish its individual identity. Unnaturalness and artificiality of partition made it incumbent upon Pakistan to establish its identity. Independent of India, of which it was till 1947, apart by geography, history, tradition and culture. Thus, Pakistan started competing with India at all international forums and used all kinds of means to acquire prominence. For example, Pakistan began to emphasize its religious links with the Muslim states of Western Asia. But in spite of this, India's relations with Western Asian countries remained very cordial. In Pakistan's security perceptions, India's size, population, resources, and capabilities posed a serious challenge. It resulted in Pakistan's constant efforts at the strengthening of its military power. This was attempted in securing military aid from different countries in the world. Cold War considerations proved handy when Pakistan chose the Western blocs for this purpose. India, governed by its defense requirements, had to strengthen its armed forces. However, India has always allocated a policy of setting issues at the negotiating table.
Modern India, Unit 40, Part 3, 40.6.1, 40.6.1, page number 36. Kashmir. Kashmir has been the thorniest problem between India and Pakistan. Pakistan refused to acknowledge Kashmir's accession to India on 26 October 1947 and sponsored a tribal invasion. India undertook a swift military action supported by the local population led by Sheikh Abdullah to drive out the Pakistani invaders from Kashmir. Unfortunately, even without accomplishing the task, a complaint was lodged by India with the Security Council of the United Nations Organization in January 1948, resulting into a ceasefire, CEASE-FIRE, on 1st January 1949. In 1947, India also made another unwarranted offer to hold plebiscite, PLEBISCITE, in Kashmir under international supervision, which it finally withdrew in 1955 because of the changed circumstances. However, although diplomatic battles for Kashmir were fought in United Nations and other international forums, no hot war took place between India and Pakistan up to 1964. But Kashmir problem continues to defy any solution and remains a potentially disturbing factor in the relations between the two countries. As a matter of fact, the line of actual control has become virtually the boundary between the two countries, neither side showing any keenness to alter it by force. 40.6.2 Indus River Water Dispute. Among the many problems created by the partition, equitable sharing of the waters of the Indus and some of its tributaries had been the most vexed one, vexed one. Both India and Pakistan wanted to attain self-sufficiency in food by utilizing the waters of the Indus. Next para. The partition gave India only 5 million of the 28 million acres of land irrigated by the Indus system. Most of the waters of the western rivers went into the sea, while some Pakistani canals depended on the eastern rivers flowing through the East Punjab for their supplies. India's hopes for agricultural development were based on the utilization of these eastern rivers, that is, the Ravi, the Beas and the Sutlej. The fact that the headworks of some vital canals in Pakistan fell within the territory of India created tension between the two countries. India was blamed by successive governments for any calamity created by natural factors like droughts and floods in Pakistan. They held India responsible for water problems and pressed for equitable distribution of river waters. India, on the other hand, was keen to resolve this crisis. Under the auspices of the World Bank, an interim agreement on canal waters was signed in Washington on 17 April 1959. Subsequently, it was followed by a comprehensive agreement between the two countries. The Canal Waters Treaty was signed on 19 September 1969 in Karachi. 40.6.3 Military aid to Pakistan. Pakistan signed the Mutual Defense Assistance Agreement with the United States and became a member of the Southeast Asian Treaty Organization, in brackets SEATO, in September 1954. Pakistan also joined the Central Treaty Organization, in brackets Baghdad Pact, PACT, bracket close, in 1955. In 1959, Pakistan concluded a bilateral agreement of cooperation with the United States, following which the latter provided large-scale economic and military assistance to Pakistan. This increased Pakistan's military capabilities, which in turn created a security concern for India. Despite this, India did not align itself with any of the major powers. 40.7 China. After India became independent, one of the first countries with which it established diplomatic relations was the nationalist government of China, led by Chiang Kai-shek, CHIANG But when the nationalist government was overthrown by the communists in 1949, 1949, India recognized the new government led by Mao Tse-tung, MAOTSETUNG, on 30 December 1949. 1949. India thereafter tried consistently to get the People's Republic of China admitted to the United Nations. India sought to pursue a policy of friendship with China since independence, but the results were frustrating. In order to understand the genesis of strains in Sino-Indian ties, it is useful to know the differing perceptions on the question of developments in Tibet, border conflicts, and the Chinese aggression of 1962. 1962. 40.7.1 40.7.1 Developments in Tibet. The Chinese People's Liberation Army (PLA) entered Tibet in 1950 and brought it under occupation. An event which shocked India. India shared about 2,000 miles of frontier in the Tibet region and had inherited certain rights and obligations over Tibet from the British rule. However, India decided not to confront China on that issue and continued to cultivate friendly relations. In 1954, India concluded an agreement with China by which Chinese occupation of Tibet was formalized. This agreement contained 5 principles popularly known as Panchashil, which became the guiding principles in the relationship between India and China. The 5 principles were: 1. Mutual respect for each other's territorial integrity and sovereignty. 2. Mutual non-aggression. 3. Mutual non-interference in each other's internal affairs. 4. Equality and mutual benefit. And 5. Peaceful coexistence. Next para. By this Treaty of 1954, India recognized the right of China to set up its commercial agencies in New Delhi, Calcutta and Kalimpong, Kalimpong. India, in return, was allowed to establish its own trade center in Tibet. Next para. In 1959, a popular uprising took place in Tibet, which was promptly suppressed by China. There was deep indignation in India over this, and when the Dalai Lama fled from Tibet, he was given political asylum in India, much to the dislike of China. In 1959, China occupied Longzhou, Longju, and 12,000 square miles of Indian territory in Ladakh. Subsequently, protest notes, memorandums, and aid memories were exchanged. aid memories were exchanged between the two countries, detailing the respective positions on the border problem. 40.7.2 Tension on India-China border. The developments in Tibet prompted China to indulge in border violations on the Indian frontiers. China laid claims on large parts of Indian territories, which India firmly repudiated. REPUDIATED. The Chinese Prime Minister Zhou Enlai, CHOU-EN-LAI, came to New Delhi in April 1960 to negotiate border disputes, but it did not lead to any settlement. Official teams of the two countries also visited each other, but no agreement could be reached and the border incursions INCURSIONS continued. By increasing border violations, the Chinese continued to mount pressures on the Indians. 40.7.3 Chinese aggression in 1962. In October 1962, China launched full-fledged attack on India in NEFA in capital letters, in brackets, New Arunachal, bracket close, and Ladakh. Thus, a war between India and China started, which ended in a military debacle, DEBACLE, for India. Next para. However, China made a unilateral declaration of its withdrawal in November 1962. During the war, India depended on military aid from the Western powers. The Soviet Union also supported India's cause, but China continued its occupation of a large chunk CHUNK of Ladakh territory, which provided it the much needed strategic link between Xinjiang SINKIANG and southern China. Next para. Doubts were expressed in India about the efficacy of its foreign policy. India tried to search diplomatic avenues to pressurize China to return the territories, but it did not have the desired success. The Afro-Asian AFRO-Asian mediation by Indonesia, Cambodia, Burma, UAR, Ghana, GHANA, and Ceylon to find a peaceful solution of Sino-Indian border dispute at Colombo in 1962 failed to get a favorable response from China. Thus, the relations between India and China continue to remain tense due to the border dispute. Next para. After 1962, China took significant steps to boost its image in the South and Southeast Asian region. It tried to contain Indian influence wherever possible and cultivated intimate relations with Pakistan and Burma. India, on the other hand, was faced to direct its resources for defense production. Check your progress too. 1. What were the main causes of discord between India and Pakistan? In brackets, answer in about 10 lines. 2. What was India's attitude to the Chinese occupation of Tibet in 1950? 1950. In brackets, answer in about 5 lines. 3. Which of the following statements are right or wrong? Right, mark with a right mark. Wrong, mark with a cross. 1. There was no tension between India and Pakistan over the sharing of Indus waters. In bracket, you should write the answer. 2. Pakistan joined SEATO, SEATO in capital letters. 3. After 1954, 1954, Tibet became an independent country. 4. After 1962, there was a tremendous increase in India's defense budget.
My name is Vani, subject history. The book name is Indian Modern History 1867 to 1964. Unit 40, Foreign Policy of India 1947 to 1964. 40.8 South and Southeast Asia. India attached great importance to improving relations with all South and Southeast Asian countries and played an active role to promote peace and progress in that region. The Cold War between the two superpowers, however, limited the role of India as the harbinger, HARBINGER, of peace in that region. But India still tried to maintain friendly ties and cooperation with all these countries. It accepted the role offered by the Geneva Conference of Peacemaker in the region and became chairman of the International Control Commission. We discuss here the relations between various South and Southeast Asian countries and India. Nepal. The geographical location of Nepal between the southern slopes of the Himalaya mountains and the northern borders of India made it inseparable from India from the point of view of later's security. India was conscious of this factor when it signed a treaty with Nepal in July 1950, whereas India recognized Nepal's sovereignty, territorial integrity, and independence. The two countries undertook to inform each other of any serious friction or misunderstanding arising on any problem. Bhutan. Situated in the Himalayas and sharing a common border with China, Bhutan is strategically linked to India. The two countries signed a treaty for perpetual PERPETUAL peace and friendship in August 1949. The government of India undertook to exercise non-interference in the internal administration of Bhutan, and on the other hand, Bhutan agreed to be guided by the advice of the Government of India in regard to its external relations. Ceylon, Sri Lanka. Situated in Indian Ocean, any development in Sri Lanka is very important for Indian security and peace. Sri Lanka is mainly inhabited by the two communities, that is Sinhalese, Shinhalese, and Tamils. There have been constant frictions and disputes between these two communities. Tamil Sinhalese riots of 1958 and thereafter were serious, and all these occasions some Indian leaders expressed sympathy for Tamils inside and outside the parliament. However, such gestures were never liked by the government in Sri Lanka. India considers the ethnic disputes of Sri Lanka to be the internal affairs of the country. It has remained friendly towards Sri Lanka and has forged mutually beneficent economic and trade relations. Sri Lanka supports NAM and has not joined any military alliances. Burma. Burma under UNU was extremely friendly to India, and the two countries played pivotal role in arousing the consciousness of Afro-Asian solidarity. But the overthrow of UNU gave way to the emergence of dictatorship in Burma, and an isolationist trend in Burma's foreign policy asserted itself after 1962. However, India tried to maintain its attitude of good neighborliness, and the overall relations remained normal. Thailand. Thailand, which was never colonialist in the past, became a member of SEATO, SEATO in September 1954. The headquarters of SEATO is at Bangkok, and Thailand sided with the West powers in the Cold War against the Soviet bloc. In spite of these factors, India continued to maintain friendly relations with Thailand because of some cultural affinities and common economic interests. The two countries continued to have bilateral agreements to promote economic relations. Cambodia. Cambodia, under the premiership of Prince Norodom Sihanouk, Norodom Sihanouk, was very friendly to India, and the two countries worked collectively to avoid being parties to the Cold War. India, as the chairman of the International Control Commission, worked satisfactorily to demarcate the boundaries of that country with other Indo-Chinese countries. Both the countries were very active at the Bandung Conference in 1955. Nehru and Sihanouk were admirers of each other, and this facilitated the promotion of cordial relations between the two countries. Laos, Laos. India has close ties with Laos towards India supported the Laotian Laotian policy of neutrality. Laos also followed the non-aligned policy and the two countries had identity of views on international affairs. Vietnam, North and South. India had been concerned with the light of the Viet Minh, Vietminh, and the conflict between two Vietnams. India had relationship with the Democratic Republic of Vietnam and the Republic of Vietnam and the constitute level. India wanted to work for peace and development of that region, but the non-cooperation of the NGO Diem regime in South Vietnam, which was under American influence, came in the way. India welcomed the visits of Ngo Dinh and Indo Chi Minh to New Delhi in 1957 and 1958 respectively. India wanted to remain unattached on the question of unity of the two Vietnams. Ho Chi Minh and the liberation struggle in India-China had received tremendous support from the Indian people. Philippines. Philippines as a member of SEATO was militarily aligned to the Western Bloc. India had diplomatic relations with that country and it pursued a policy calculated to strengthen economic contacts. But India's efforts did not meet with success. India wanted Afro-Asian countries to avoid entanglement military alignments with the Western powers. But the Philippines not only joined a military pact but also gave Clark Air Base and Subic Bay Naval Base to USA. Malaysia inhabited by the Malaysia, Chinese and the Indian communities has had a democratic polity. It supported India to strengthen Afro-Asian solidarity. It too was apprehensive of the intentions of the People's Republic of China towards Southeast Asia. Malaysia supported India at the international forums and forged closer economic ties. Malaysia welcomed the largest number of Indian joint ventures. As Nehru and Tunku Abdul Rahman were educated in Britain, both of them had similar perception on several international issues. Thus, the relations were forged on a sound footing of mutual trust and cooperation. India was opposed to Indonesia's Crush Malaysia plan and gave support to Malaysia in nation building. Indonesia. Indonesia is the largest country in the Southeast Asian region. The leader of Indonesian independence movement, Sukarno, was friendly to Nehru. India and Indonesia signed a treaty of friendship in March 1951 to promote perpetual peace and unalterable friendship. Indonesia initially supported India to forge Afro-Asian unity, to accelerate the pace of decolonization. It hosted the Afro-Asian Conference at Bandung in 1955. But Indonesia under Sukarno began to advocate the concepts of new emerging forces NEFOS against the old established forces OLDEFOS. It started a crusade against colonialism, neocolonialism, and imperialism. India did not share these militant ideas in international relations. India's refusal to join NEFOS offended Indonesia to a great extent. When China invaded India, Indonesia was cool and did not express sympathy for India. Sukarno even supported the formation of Jakarta, Pindi, Peking, Pyongyang, PYONGYANG, axis against the Western Bloc. In September 1964, Ayub Sukarno, Communique, COMMUNIQUE, supported Pakistan's stand on Kashmir, and in the following year, Indonesia urged NEFOS to help Pakistan in its war with India. However, the diplomatic, cultural, and economic relations between the two countries continued. India, however, did not take sides with the foes of Indonesia. My name is Vani, subject history. The book name is Indian Modern History 1867 to 1964, Unit 40, Foreign Policy of India 1947 to 1964. 40.9 West Asia. India strove to forge friendly ties with the various countries in West Asia, that is, Egypt, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Jordan, Turkey, Sudan, Yemen, Kuwait, etc. West Asia holds about 60% of the world's oil deposits. This area connects two strategically important waterways: the straits connecting the Black Sea with the Mediterranean and the Suez connecting the Red Sea with the Mediterranean. India has taken important initiatives to end the conflict in this area. A close look at the Palestine question, Arab-Israel dispute or Suez crisis proves that India took a definite stand to side with the countries in the Arab world to promote peace and development of the region. 1. Palestine's question. Of all the disputes referred to the United Nations from West Asia, probably the Palestine question was one of the most complete. The question of Palestine was first brought before the UN by Great Britain in 1947, when it wanted the General Assembly to take up the issue of the future setup of Palestine. In accordance with the British request, the General Assembly set up a special committee on Palestine. The committee submitted its report in August 1947 and recommended that Palestine should be divided into an Arab state, a Jewish state, and a special and including Jerusalem should remain under international government. The recommendations of the committee were accepted by the General Assembly by a two-thirds vote. The General Assembly formed a commission on Palestine to implement these recommendations. Israel emerged as a state on the international horizon with the backing of the Western powers, but the Arabs were not ready to accept its existence. Subsequently, the problem of the homeland of Palestinians was raised with popular support, and thus the problem became more and more complicated. At every stage, India fully supported the Palestinian cause inside and outside the United Nations. Suez Crisis. Suez Crisis was one of the most expensive questions which threatened the peace of the world. In July 1956, President Nasser of Egypt announced the nationalization of the Suez Canal and froze the Suez Canal Company funds in Egypt. Great Britain and France took a serious view of the nationalization. In their view, the action taken by the government of Egypt was in contravention of the International Charter of the Suez Canal established by the Treaty of Constantinople of 1851. Rival claims were made and charges were levelled by the Anglo-French and Egyptian governments. India and the United States offered their proposals to end the dispute, but they were not acceptable to Egypt. India suggested that the Suez Canal should be recognized as an integral part of Egypt. It supported the Egyptian case at the United Nations when the Security Council took up this issue for discussion. In October 1956, Israel, France, and Britain attacked Egyptian positions in the Suez Canal area. India and the Afro-Asian group expressed their sympathy for Egypt and urged immediate ceasefire. Finally, in November, there was a ceasefire and thus a plan was mooted MOOTED for an emergency force of the United Nations to supervise the end of hostilities and protect Egypt. Egypt agreed to the stationing of the UN forces and once again to respect the obligations under the Treaty of Constantinople. India played an active role in the resolution of Suez Crisis. Check your progress 3. Question 1. Discuss India's relations with Sri Lanka in about 10 lines. Question 2. Explain the relations between India and Indonesia. Answer in about 10 lines. Third question. What do you understand by Suez Crisis? What was India's attitude towards it? Answer in about 10 lines. Mark correct or cross for incorrect statements. Number 1. India pursues a policy of peaceful coexistence in relation to all its neighbors. Number 2. According to the Treaty of Bhutan, cannot establish relations with a third country without the advice of India. Number 3. India does not maintain any contact with Thailand because Thailand is a member of SEATO, SEATO. Number 4, Ho Chi Minh and the liberation struggle in Indochina had received full support from the Indian people. Number 5, India was opposed to Indonesia's Crush Malaysia plan. My name is Vani, subject history. The book name is Indian Modern History 1867 to 1964, Unit 40, Foreign Policy of India 1947 to 1964. 40.9 West Asia. India strove to forge friendly ties with the various countries in West Asia, that is, Egypt, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Jordan, Turkey, Sudan, Yemen, Kuwait, etc. West Asia holds about 60% of the world's oil deposits. This area connects two strategically important waterways: the straits connecting the Black Sea with the Mediterranean and the Suez connecting the Red Sea with the Mediterranean. India has taken important initiatives to end the conflict in this area. A close look at the Palestine question, Arab-Israel dispute or Suez crisis proves that India took a definite stand to side with the countries in the Arab world to promote peace and development of the region. 1. Palestine's question. Of all the disputes referred to the United Nations from West Asia, probably the Palestine question was one of the most complete. The question of Palestine was first brought before the UN by Great Britain in 1947, when it wanted the General Assembly to take up the issue of the future setup of Palestine. In accordance with the British request, the General Assembly set up a special committee on Palestine. The committee submitted its report in August 1947 and recommended that Palestine should be divided into an Arab state, a Jewish state, and a special, and including Jerusalem should remain under international government. The recommendations of the committee were accepted by the General Assembly by a 2/3 vote. The General Assembly formed a commission on Palestine to implement these recommendations. Israel emerged as a state on the international horizon with the backing of the Western powers, but the Arabs were not ready to accept its existence. Subsequently, the problem of the homeland of Palestinians was raised with popular support, and thus the problem became more and more complicated. At every stage, India fully supported the Palestinian cause inside and outside the United Nations. Suez crisis. Suez crisis was one of the most expensive questions which threatened the peace of the world. In July 1956, President Nasser of Egypt announced the nationalization of the Suez Canal and froze the Suez Canal Company funds in Egypt. Great Britain and France took a serious view of the nationalization. In their view, the action taken by the government of Egypt was in contravention of the International Charter of the Suez Canal established by the Treaty of Constantinople of 1851. rival claims were made and charges were leveled by the Anglo-French and Egyptian governments. India and the United States offered their proposals to end the dispute, but they were not acceptable to Egypt. India suggested that the Suez Canal should be recognized as an integral part of Egypt. It supported the Egyptian case at the United Nations when the Security Council took up this issue for discussion. In October 1956, Israel, France, and Britain attacked Egyptian positions in the Suez Canal area. India and the Afro-Asian group expressed their sympathy for Egypt and urged immediate ceasefire. Finally, in November, there was a ceasefire and thus a plan was mooted MOOTED for an emergency force of the United Nations to supervise the end of hostilities and protect Egypt. Egypt agreed to the stationing of the UN forces and once again to respect the obligations under the Treaty of Constantinople. India played an active role in the resolution of Suez crisis. Check your progress 3. Question 1. Discuss India's relations with Sri Lanka in about 10 lines. Question 2. Explain the relations between India and Indonesia. Answer in about 10 lines. Third question. What do you understand by Suez crisis? What was India's attitude towards it? Answer in about 10 lines. Mark correct or cross for incorrect statements. Number 1. India pursues a policy of peaceful coexistence in relation to all its neighbors. Number 2. According to the Treaty of Bhutan, cannot establish relations with a third country without the advice of India. Number 3. India does not maintain any contact with Thailand because Thailand is a member of SEATO, SEATO. Number 4. Ho Chi Minh and the liberation struggle in Indochina had received full support from the Indian people. Number 5. India was opposed to Indonesia's Crush Malaysia plan.
Book Khula's Geography, Unit 40. Independent India Travels Development 1947 to 1964, 1947 to 1964, page 44. According to the Treaty of Bhutan can now establish relations with a third country without the advice of India. Third, India does not maintain any contact with Thailand because Thailand is a member of the SEATO, SEATO within bracket. Number 4, Ho Chi Minh, HOCHIMINH, and the liberation struggle in Indochina had received full support from the Indian people. Number 5, India was opposed to Indonesia's Crush Malaysia Plan. 40.10 Superpowers and other major powers. India tried to balance its relation with the superpowers and other major powers right from its independence. In this sector, we shall examine how these relations developed over the years. 40.10.1 The United Nations. Though India was indebted to Roosevelt for his support during the independence struggle, the United States took little interest in this region till the rise of communism in China. During the initial years of India's independence, the US supported Pakistan on Kashmir issue in the Security Council. It also wanted India to join military alliances sponsored by the US. The differences in Indo-American perceptions became widespread. On many international issues, while India opposed colonialism of all kinds, the US opposed colonialism only when the independence movements were not dominated by communist forces. Wherever national movements were dominated by the communist forces, the USA, U full stop, S full stop, A full stop, preferred to remain neutrally supported the colonial power. India's recognition of People's Republic of China and its constant efforts to seek China's admission in the United States nations further embittered the relations between the two. In spite of these differences, India continued to receive the front for scenic US in economic and technical fields. During the Indochina's War of 1962-1962 and the US offered prompt military assistance. Eisenhower and Kennedy, within brackets, both presidents of USA, all visited India during this period. Despite all these gestures, India did not choose to support the containment policy of the US and remained non-aligned. 40.10.2 The Soviet Union. The Soviet Union had supported India's struggle for independence after 1947. Developments in the international scene brought the two countries further closer to each other. The Soviet leaders were impressed due to India's decision to recognize PRC within bracket People's Republic of China, its support to anti-colonial struggles at the United Nations, its efforts to establish ceasefire in Korea and refusal to brand PRC as an aggressor, its refusal to be part of alliances against USSR. The Soviet Union, on its part, supported India on Kashmir issue. The Soviet leaders, Bulganin, Bulganin, and Khrushchev, Khrushchev, visited India in 1955-1955, and the two countries signed agreements. Later, the Soviet Union supported India on the Goa issue. During the Suez crisis, the Soviet Union and India took up a similar stand to condemn aggression. The Soviet Union provided $500 million for the third five-year plan and supplied oil when the Western companies were unwilling to do so. Page 45. In 1962, when the Chinese invaded India, the Soviet Union not only expressed sympathy for India but helped India to manufacture MiG fighter planes. The Soviet leaders expressed their support for India's policy of non-alignment and peaceful coexistence. 40.10.3 Britain. Though India became a member of British-led Commonwealth, India was ever cautious of the British policies in the post-independence era. Britain's attitude also gave grounds for such caution. It sided with Pakistan on the Kashmir issue, and the two countries became allies by virtue of their membership of SEATO. SEATO. India became naturally unhappy with these developments. Moreover, India did not approve Britain's West Asian policy. The most condemnable British behavior was to intervene militarily to occupy Suez Canal and to threaten Egyptian independence. Thus India, along with the Soviet Union, protested against the Anglo-French intervention. This annoyed British, but it had to stop its adventurous role in West Asia and agreed to the diplomatic solution of the crisis. Though Indian perceptions differed with those of the British, the latter showed sympathy on occasions with the Indians. This became clear at the time of the Chinese aggression of India in 1962. Britain was the first to send its message of sympathy and support to India on the eve of the Chinese aggression. 40.10.4 France. France is another major power with which India tried to forge friendly relations. France also gave considerable importance to the Indian view while dealing with the issues relating to the Afro-Asian countries. India took important initiatives to influence France to decolonize Indo-Chinese states. A time of the transfer of power to Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia, Indian opinion was given due respect, but France felt unhappy with the Indian opposition to its intervention in the Suez crisis. Later on, France made efforts to improve Indo-French relations. France was very sympathetic to India at the time of the Chinese aggression and also agreed to supply strategic weapon to India. 40.10.5 Japan. As far as Japan is concerned, Free India did not share the Allied powers' views of Japanese adventures in the Second World War, India refused to ask for war reparations from Japan. In June 1952, 1952, Indo-Japanese Peace Treaty was signed, which paved the way for greater economic and commercial relations. The process of Indo-Japan relations was further accelerated by the Civil Aviation Agreement within bracket November 1955, Cultural Agreement within bracket February 1956, 1956, First Yen Loan Agreement within bracket February 1958, 1958, and Indo-Japanese Trade Agreements within bracket February 1958, 1958. Some joint ventures and Japanese assistance to develop small-scale industries in India and cooperation in other technological factors strengthened our bilateral relations. Book Khullar's Geography, Unit 40, page 46, continued, second file. 40.10.6 Australia. India desired to develop closer relations with Australia also. The nearness and proximity of the Pacific and the Indian Oceans takes Australia very important strategically for Southeast Asia, and the subcontinent Australia can play a neutralizing role, namely vis-a-vis China, and promote the security interests in the countries in the region. India and Australia belong to the same Commonwealth group of nations. When Australia joined SEATO, SEATO, and yet sought greater interaction with South and Southeast Asian countries, India took note of it without much enthusiasm. India sought closer economic and cultural ties with Australia, and this desire was reciprocated. Australia never took the side of Pakistan or expressed solidarity with China against India's interests. 40.11 African countries. India gave its supports for independence movements in the African countries. It tried to associate Asian struggle for decolonization with that of Africa and worked effectively to create world opinion against colonialism. The emergence of the Afro-Asian group at the United Nations after 1949 was an impression of common aspiration of the Asian and page 47 African people. Later, when India, Egypt and others sponsored the non-aligned movement, many African countries joined in to strengthen Afro-Asian solidarity. 40.11 African countries. India gave its support for independence movements in the African countries. It tried to associate Asian struggle for decolonization with that of the Africa and worked effectively to create world opinion against colonization. The emergence of the Afro-Asian group at the United Nations after 1949 was an impression of common aspirations of the Asian and African people. Page 47. Later, when India, Egypt and others sponsored the non-aligned movement, many African countries joined in to strengthen Afro-Asian solidarity. India had opposed the South African policy of apartheid even before its independence. In the post-independence era, it worked for the elimination of racial discrimination and apartheid in South Africa in all the international forums. India imposed a total ban on all imports from and exports to South Africa. India had forged close relations with Zambia, Tanzania, Kenya and Sudan initially, and later it extended a hand of friendship and cooperation to Algeria, Algeria, Libya, Morocco, Morocco, Tunisia, UNISIA, and others. India exported cotton piece goods, jute, tea, tobacco, spice, sugar and light, engineering goods, etc. to Africa and imported raw cotton, metallic copper, rock phosphates, PHOS, PHATES and tanning materials, etc. The bilateral relations with various African countries have been cordial. Check your progress for number 1. Discuss India's relations with Soviet Union in about 10 lines. Number 2. Explain in about 5 lines India's policy towards the independence movements in the African countries. Number 3. What are the basic differences in approach to international relations between India and USA? Answer in about 5 lines. 40.212 40.12. Let us sum up. We have briefly covered almost the whole spectrum of India's foreign policy during 1947 to 1964, 1947 to 1964. A description of various kinds of interaction and interrelation between India to strengthen relations with the countries in the South Pacific and Latin America. They have not been highlighted in this unit. The main aim of Indian foreign policy during 1947 to 1964 was to assert its independence and pronounce its own national and promote its own national interests, but the promotion of interests of the developing and underdeveloped countries too were given priority by India at various international forums. It abhorred, ABHORRED, the idea to forge military alliance with the Western or communist world and promoted the non-alignment movement. It supported the policy of peaceful coexistence and development, which was India's great contribution to international politics. Though it suffered a setback in 1962 because of the Chinese aggression, the main foundation of India's foreign policy were laid during 1947 to 1964 page 48. 40.13 Keywords: anti-Nicolim, NECOLIM, anti-colonialism, non-colonialism, and imperialism. Apartheid, APARTHEID, a political system used in South Africa in which people of different races are kept apart by law. By this system, the domination of the whites on the blacks of Africa has been perpetuated. Arms race, competition among the countries for building up weapons. Bandung Conference, a group of Asian and African nations who have general identity of interest and aspiration, hold a conference at Bandung, BANDUNG, in Indonesia in 1955. This conference marked the emergence in new force in world affairs. Bipolar, division between two groups and division between more than two, is called multipolar. Bloc politics, two or more countries forming a group act or judge political question. Containment policy, the policy of keeping other countries' power or area of control within acceptable boundaries. Disarmament, reduction of the number of weapons, especially nuclear weapons, that a country has. Geneva Conference in 1954, 19 nations met at Geneva to resolve the crisis of Korea and Indochina. One of the significant results of this conference was the division of Vietnam into North Vietnam and South Vietnam. The communists formed the government in North Vietnam and the non-communists in South Vietnam. Independent foreign policy. Policy formulated by the country without any reservation or bias to other country. International Control Commission. It was established by the Geneva Conference to supervise the implementation of the ceasefire agreements in Indochina and establish peace in the region. India, Canada, and Poland were its member, and India was its chairman. NEFOS, NEFOS, within bracket, new emerging forces, democracy, nationalism, socialism and communism. Non-alignment, making independent decisions on international issues by a country without being tied to any particular country or group of countries. OLDEFOS, OLDEFOS, within bracket, old established forces, imperialism, colonialism, aristocracy. 40.14 Answers to Check Your Progress exercises. Check Your Progress 1, subclauses 1. The three important principles of Indian foreign policies are non-participation in any military alliance, independent approach to international issues, and to work for world peace through disarmament. Briefly explain these principles in 2 or 3 sentences. See section 40.2. Subdivision 2. Non-alignment meant independent decisions making by a country or any international issue without being influenced by other country. With this, you have to add the principles of non-alignment, non-participation in any military alliance, supporting the anti-colonial movement in other countries, etc. See section 40.4. Subdivision 3. 1. Wrong. 2nd, wrong. 3rd, right. 4th, right. Check your progress. 2. 1. Your answers should include Pakistan's anxiety for India's size, population, resources and capabilities, Pakistan's problem of identity, Kashmir issue, dispute over sharing of river waters, and military aid to Pakistan by other major powers. See section 40.6. Second file completed.